People sometimes ask me what my approach is to training, and the answer really is to be as practical as possible. I'm not a great believer in rules. I think that blanket rules tend to have exceptions and they can become problematic. So we'll start where you are. If you come to me for training, I'll ask you what you write. We'll look at examples of what you write. Most people who come to me for training are already reasonably good writers. So we'll look at what works, and then we'll use a set of tools and techniques to help your writing do its job more effectively. I may not believe in rules so much, but I think there is a set of principles that we can apply, really quite straightforward principles, that will help us write whatever we're writing. And the core principle really is to have something to say, which is probably the trickiest bit to deal with, and then to say it as clearly as possible. Everything else comes from that core principle. Good speaking starts with good listening. Seek first to understand, as Stephen Covey famously said, then to be understood. In conversation, in interviews, in one to ones, in meetings, That means being able to listen to the person that you're speaking to or to the group that you're speaking with, understand their expectations, and respond to them. In a presentation or a speech, it means being able somehow to understand the audience, who are, of course, listening to you, audio audience, to listen, and say words and sentences that are appropriate to them, that say something meaningful to them. Your voice is your public relations agent. It tells the world who you are, what kind of person you are, and it shapes your thoughts and feelings by shaping the sounds that it makes into words and sentences. It speaks through you. The word person comes from the Latin words personare, meaning to speak through. Your voice speaks through you and shares your thoughts and feelings with your audience or the person that you're speaking with. So being able to speak well means understanding how your voice works, but also understanding how you can shape the sound of your voice into words and sentences that construct shared meaning between you and whoever you're speaking to, whether that's one person or a large audience. All of my work is underpinned by a study of rhetoric. Now, these days, that word tends to have negative connotations. We think of rhetoric as writing or speaking that is intended to distort the truth, to deceive. We must look behind the rhetoric, we must cut through the rhetoric, so on. But rhetoric also refers to a vast body of knowledge that for literally thousands of years has helped people, mostly men, it must be said, persuade, explain, and entertain more effectively. It formed part of the core curriculum of a liberal education for hundreds of years. But in the last century or so, that structure of liberal education has given way, at least in part, to much more subject-specific learning, which is intended to help people enter certain careers. So a lawyer might continue to study rhetoric, perhaps, but a physicist, a doctor, an engineer, a civil servant, maybe not. And I think that's a pity. As knowledge workers in the attention economy, we need to be able to communicate more effectively. And the skills of rhetoric help us to do that. And as information, misinformation, disinformation, the distinctions between those things becomes increasingly blurred, then we need to be able not only to understand how to speak truth to power, but also how to understand when people are using language to control our minds. Rhetoric is the subject that helps us to do all of those things. That's why I join a large community, a global community of people who are interested in bringing back rhetoric, both as a subject of study and as a subject of practice.